Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at Jamer Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live, drop your comments and questions into the comment box, and you'll see me turn my head from time to time. So, anything, questions, comments as for myself or my guest. And who's my guest? Well, what would Valentine's be without chocolate? A wasted day. In honor of this beautiful day coming up, this luscious chocolates is what's forefront in my mind for Valentine's Day, and I'm sure it is for you. Let me bring on chocolatier Sarah Dwyer, who has taken a childhood passion, ran off to Paris to La Cordon Bleu pastry school to return and create Chouquette, handcrafted chocolates. Let's bring in Sarah.
What an intro. I love it. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I'm thrilled to have you here, and you're such a personality. You really are. I could tell that by the couple moments that we talked. So I'm really excited to talk to you. And we're going to get to chocolate, folks, but you know me. Well, other than doing the show today, what else is on your plate to do?
Mine.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Make and package the remaining parts of a 28,000 chocolate order that's going to about 80 different hotels for them to give out on anyone staying with them for Valentine's Day, which I just think is so sweet, especially if you're traveling for work and you have to be away from your lover, shall I say, on Valentine's Day. You get a little sweet treat from the hotel.
Right. Well, I know that, I'm based in Baltimore, you're over Bethesda, Maryland. Probably the most luxurious hotel we have in Baltimore is the Ivy Hotel, and you do chocolates for them. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll say you imprint, but you're able to
Mm-hmm.
put logos on the chocolate. But there's more to your chocolate than a logo. Tell me about your family table. Growing
Oh
up,
my.
what was the family table like?
Well, I remember before my brother went to college, he said, all we ever have is pork, steak, or chicken. Can we have something different? And I would say for most people, that's an amazing meal. My mom is a great cook. My dad was terrible. Um, he liked stewed tomatoes, cold on scrambled eggs, like just things that as kids we were not interested in at all. My favorite thing that my we ever had at the table was eggs Benedict. I'm a breakfast girl, always loved breakfast since the very beginning. And I always thought it was holiday sauce instead of hollandaise sauce
Sundays. Yeah.
because we had it on special occasions. Like Christmas morning, my mom would make eggs Benedict for everybody. And now that's become my job is I'm the one who's in charge of making Christmas and whatever holidays we're together brunch. And I take my hollandaise very seriously. So really a very well-rounded, you know, table. My mom got Gourmet magazine. Um,
Ooh.
I
Yeah.
know, I know. You just knew it was this, it was like there were, there were the people who got Gourmet magazine and they just loved it. And I remember reading the food writing in there and loving that. The stories about traveling and eating out just really always kept me going. I would read, I was born in the 70s, but I would read the ones in the 60s just to get it. And then Julia Child was always like when her shows were on, they were on our television, and my mom would cook with Julia. So I just always thought women were the chefs. I did not realize that it was a male dominated world. I just thought
Right.
all women are chefs because that's who I see in my house, and that's who I saw on TV.
The passion for chocolates started when you were young. Now, I know your little story on the website, and you did what I did, but I did mine in defense of coffee. If there was a box of 100 chocolates, if I picked one, it would have coffee in it. So I would always sort of like look.
Mhm.
But you really got into the bonbons. Tell us that story.
I've loved, I mean, I can't remember a time when I did not want chocolate. Like, it's always been there. Like fighting my sister for the brownie batter spoon, which I know we're
Right.
not supposed to have because that has raw eggs in it, but I'm still alive, so I'm fine. But licking the bowl, making chocolate chip cookies with my friends. Chocolate was always something that I just found so much pleasure in. And my grandmother would get the Whitman sampler, and it was never marked properly. Like there was supposed to be a map, and there was supposed to be all that stuff, but it was not there. And so I was always looking for the chocolate covered caramels because those are my favorite. Well, you have to squish a lot of fairly nice chocolates in order to only find the chocolate covered caramels, which I realized are almost always in those boxes square or rectangular. So that helped. Um, but every now and then I would bite into the one that tasted like baby aspirin. I think it's called orange cream. And I was like, this just reminds me of having chicken pox. No, thank you. And so then I would try to put it back in the box. And my grandmother found out, I think on Christmas Eve, that I had squished like 27 of the 30 in her box. And she was not happy with me. And she was the nicest lady in the world, but she was like, no dessert for you on Christmas Eve. But I had probably eaten 17 chocolates, so I was totally fine with that. But really, I always say that squishing of them and then putting them back, you're fine to squish them. I don't have a problem with that. But then putting it back in the box, like that's crimes against chocolate and should be prosecuted. Like you eat it and then do you think no one's going to notice that you put that back in the box, Tara?
Yeah.
If you
Oh.
picked a chocolate up out of a box and it had a bite out of it, you would notice.
Well, I wouldn't do a bite. I would
Oh,
just whatever,
squish it.
but
Yeah.
right. But inevitably, if it was
You're
2,000 chocolates and there was
mhm.
one coffee chocolate, I would inevitably pick it up. And I would probably look at that square and rectangle and think that it's this or that, but it's coffee.
And you
Um,
don't like and you don't care for coffee. Is that what you're saying?
no, no,
Yes.
I'm I did this wine thing and I'm like the super smeller, super taster. So coffee's
Uh,
extremely bitter to me. Now I'll eat
same.
cruciferous green foods like cabbage and things like that. I don't mind the bitter and the radicchio, but
Yeah.
coffee, I don't even like the smell. And people
Mhm.
go, "Oh, I don't drink it, but I love." I go, "No, just for whatever reason." Chocolate and caramel. So that is what um, Chouquette does is chocolate covered caramels, but they're flavored caramels. And I remember this is, I think, way before you opened up. It was a women's chefs conference in Seattle, going way back, and they had Fran's chocolate covered caramel with sea salt.
Mhm.
Blew me away. And as people left, I saw there were extras and I was hoarding them. Um, my roommate and I were doing that. And Obama loved caramels with sea salt.
He loved Fran's.
Yeah, I know.
He carried Fran's. He had Fran's at the White House. So yeah. I mean, chocolate covered caramel. Like I don't. To me, it's the perfect combination. It's just sweet, salty, bitter, a little crunch when you bite through the chocolate, and then it's creamy, and then it like just coats your whole tongue with deliciousness. So that's my
And who
thing.
doesn't want their tongue covered with deliciousness, right?
Exactly. See?
What was it? I think, I do a little bit of study before I speak to people that the caramel with salt really goes back to a French chef
Hmm.
who did that. And
Hmm.
talking about French, you were in a banking career, finance
Hmm.
career, and
Hmm.
you went, I'm going to Paris. I'm going
Hmm.
to Le Cordon Bleu. Had how was that? How long did you live in Paris? Obviously, You had to speak some French. Was there an English teaching,
Yeah.
a petite?
Un petit peu.
Yeah.
Un
Tell
petit
me
peu.
about your time in Paris and Le Cordon Bleu.
So I was working in banking and I was about to buy a house. And I just thought, if I do this mortgage, I will have, I will be set. I will have to stay at a job for the rest of my life. And well, pretty, for the next 40 years. And I just thought I want one more excitement. I want one more hurrah before I sign that paper. And I had been working in banking, and it was 2009. So I was in a very safe product. I was very busy, and I financially did pretty well. And I was like, I'm I'm going. And so I just really dreamed about it and thought about what do I want to do next. And I thought I've always wanted to live in Paris. I've always loved pastry. And I thought like Julia Child in Paris, she went to Le Cordon Bleu. So
Right.
that's the only place I applied. I literally didn't even look at anything else. And luckily I got in. I moved to Paris for a year. I speak high school French, which means if you are going to a hardware store and you need a mousetrap, which is a souricière, you might go in and ask them for a witch or a wizard, which is a sorcière, and they will laugh at you and not show you where the souricières are. But yes, I did have mice, and I caught them with French chocolate.
Would have caught me with French chocolate too.
Exactly.
So, I mean, the instructor's words were taught in French, or did they have? It was
So,
okay.
so there was they it was Le Cordon Bleu is not, there's no, very few French people who go to Le Cordon Bleu. Most people in Europe, they make that decision to go in the culinary arts at 14, and then they apprentice, and most of them, up until now, have not really gone to a school. They may go to a short program and then become an apprentice where they learn the basics. So Le Cordon Bleu was started, like Julia Child, for Americans and other foreigners who were in France after World War II.
Right.
So they almost always had translators. And sometimes it was the US Army who was doing it for their service people, so that
And the
then they could,
wives.
kind of part
Yeah.
of the GI Bill,
Yeah.
so that they would take cooking classes in Paris. And then, so Le Cordon Bleu has always been for people who speak different languages. So the chefs would teach in French and metric. So if you don't know the difference between 6,000 grams of sugar and 600 grams of sugar, you might be a little bit lost. But luckily, we always had the ingredient list. And everything was done in grams, which was, finally, Dara, I will come and show you how to bake using weight, and you will never make a mistake again. It's so precise, it's perfect, and there's no reason why you should not be a successful baker.
Well, what can I say? I do have a scale, and if somebody gives me a recipe in grams, then I will weigh it. But if I don't
And
have a recipe in grams,
yeah,
and look, I know, flour, a cup of flour, it could be packed flour, it could be too light of flour, so it's not going to be consistent. I do have a question for you that has come in.
okay,
How do you feel about chocolate and peanut butter?
love it. I love it. So we make peanut butter caramel, and we do it in a milk chocolate. So it has that kind of Reese's met a Rolo and had a really delicious baby. And because I sometimes think a Reese's can be almost like dry tasting because of the dried
Crumbly.
peanut.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think when you have the sweetness of the caramel, and then we add a little salt, so it gives that whole, like, I just have a caramel and peanut butter and chocolate. And I don't know, I mean, I said chocolate and caramel were best friends, but peanut butter makes it a pretty good trio.
Right. Before you went to the Cordon Bleu, were you making chocolates at home?
No, but as a child, I had made almost all of Julia's recipes of cakes. Do you remember The Way to Cook? That book that came out, it had all the pictures showing everything, because most of her cookbooks had been, just text, not very many pictures.
Right.
But this one was a full color one. And so I remember like going from one to the next and like Genoise. I'm like, why not? Like, just get in there. And I remember the first time I made imbibing syrup, and I remember thinking, like, this woman is a genius. Because you have a dry cake and then you just put some imbibing syrup on it and it tastes fantastic. So I just
So she
loved
calls it
her.
imbibing, like a rum syrup and
Mhm,
something of those nature.
yeah. So the very European kind of soaked torts, which last forever because they don't get stale. And I mean, I would I would have been happy making chocolate cakes every day for my entire high school career. But one of the things we started with was gingerbread houses when I was very little. Before there were the kits, I loved doing gingerbread houses. I've always loved to, I don't know,
Decorate.
just be in the kitchen and decorate and design and come up with things that people think won't work, and then you make them work. And that's the fun part. That figuring out part, that part of my brain probably comes a little bit from my dad, who was an engineer. And that
Mhm.
like little bit like, okay, it works this way, but can I do it this way? And then probably the fundamentals of cooking really came from my mom.
Yeah. You're fearless. When I say that, I never
Thank
had the
you.
huevos to get up and do the things that the people that I talk to on this show do. But then some people might look at me and saying, "You're fearless, you do this live show." And I
Yes.
go, "How many times have I made a fool of myself?" I remember before the show, I didn't like having my picture taken. And when this goes to video and it's captured in YouTube, there's always a picture of me like this
Here, like
for
we can do a
permanent
screenshot. Okay,
st
do you want
right,
to do
you
our?
know,
Do you want to do our? Let's do our craziest face screenshot right now, and that's what we'll have them use for it. Are you ready?
I'm not
Make
sure
your
we'll get it.
craziest face.
Okay.
Okay, that's what we use.
Okay, we'll see if it works. Um, so you opened Chouquette in 2010.
Mhm.
Was your banking knowledge a advantage for you to get that
Yeah.
business open because, you have to write out a business plan and it's a loan? Um, in
Mhm.
what way did you find that it helped you get the doors open?
Well, I worked on more on the like training and soft skills in finance.
Okay,
I was not a broker, and then I was in sales. So to me, like I just think when people say they're in sales, it means they're. It's not necessarily to buy something; it's to convince people to do it. And I always thought of sales as being education. If you teach people what you offer, and they need it, they'll call you. And that's
right,
kind of how I thought about things. Like eventually hotels will call me, eventually brides will call me. I will have what they need and I'll make sure they know what I can do. And then that's really kind of how it happened, that like very soft sales training ideas is what I um, relied on in the beginning. And then I did farm markets. But the finance side probably um, helped me just realize that I could do it, like, you don't, and that it also taught me in the very beginning, and I will tell this for anyone who needs advice, don't buy a lot of equipment in the beginning because you never know. Like, you might go from thinking you're going to make cupcakes all day and then you switch to marshmallows. Like, I really thought I would have more of a like pastry background, but I realized since I did farm markets, that was already kind of covered by, in most farm markets, there was already a great baker. And I could do some French things, but there are some great French bakeries. So, what I realized I could specialize in was chocolate covered caramels that tasted better and looked better than I think anyone else's. And that's kind of where I like just found out. So, I think that kind of being able to focus the 80-20 rule, like, focus my product, 80% of it is chocolate covered caramels. And we've
right,
added things since, but I think that simplification um, kind of came from client segmenting that I learned a lot in the finance world.
right. And the fact that your grassroots was the farmer's market.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
great. Did you do many? Was it DuPont Circle or?
I did the Bethesda Women's Market, which I don't know if
Okay,
it's been there since like 1930. It's an amazing little place. It kind of like an incubator. If I win the lottery, I would love to recreate something like that because I think it's really hard for people to find a little space, especially in the DC our areas. Like rent's not
right,
easy, and then to take that, and then we also did the Bethesda, the big outside market
right.
in Bethesda. It was challenging because they wanted me to come every week, and people don't buy chocolate every week. So, and then weather could be challenging as well. So we really couldn't do it in the summer. But the inside Bethesda Women's Market, I credit them. I was there for about 2.5, 3 years. And it kind of just got me started enough. And then I started getting wholesale accounts. Um, and then little by little kind of grew the business.
I don't know what the technical name, were you imprinting in those days on top
Mhm.
of the chocolates?
Not really all of them are that way now. Like we have some special ones like we do for the Ivy, which is a fleur-de-lis shape. Um, but one of the things I just loved is someone gave me a birthday card. It was a round birthday card and it said happy birthday around the edges. And I just thought that would be the cutest chocolate ever. So we made the birthday chocolates and because gift stores always wanted, that's
Right,
I think when I go to a gift store or a little gourmet store and I want to buy something, then like a lot of times it's either thank you or birthday. And so I thought
right,
by covering initially the birthday ones, then we added happily ever after, then we added Maryland flag. So we added all those things in, but it's a screen printed cocoa butter. So it's like a temporary tattoo for a chocolate.
okay,
So wherever it's white cocoa butter, that goes in the mold, and then the chocolate fills in everywhere where that cocoa butter isn't. So if
right,
it's happy birthday in white, then the rest of it will be
right,
brown. And that was kind of one thing I wanted to be able to send a message on the chocolates.
right. I didn't know, I know imprint was incorrect, but I
No, no,
didn't
it's fine.
know. But thank
Yeah.
you for explaining. Um, and you said you wanted it to be the best chocolate somebody put in their mouth. You use fair trade Goutard chocolate.
Hmm.
You do milk and dark chocolate,
Hmm.
um, fresh cream, non-GMO cane sugar,
Hmm.
real Madagascar bourbon vanilla beans, and sea salt. You're using fleur de sel, am I correct?
Yeah, from the south of France.
Okay, now I know, and that's sort of bigger granules. So what you're doing different than what Franz did is the sea salt is underneath the chocolate. The chocolate's over the sea salt and the caramel.
Hmm.
I'm tasting it now,
One
and
of
that
the
crunch.
reasons why do you want, I do want, so the roof of your mouth does not have any taste buds. So when you put that chocolate covered caramel in, if you are going to eat one like Fran's, which I highly recommend, if you haven't tried a Fran's caramel, go get them. Like they're the perfect little treat size. The caramel is perfectly cooked. It has a little bit of almost a burnt taste, which the only way you get that is by using real cane sugar. If you look at chocolate covered caramels, you know this, that a lot of chocolate is chocolatey candy now. It doesn't, they've replaced the cocoa butter with palm oil or something worse. The caramel is now um, basically colored and flavored corn syrup. The only way you get that deep taste is to start with real sugar. And I know sugar is not what you should have, but I will quote Julia Child one more time: everything in
Moderation,
moderation, including moderation. So I
right?
think if you're going to have a sweet treat, and I again highly recommend Fran's, turn it upside down because it's your tongue that tastes the salt. So if you want the salt to come forward, turn it upside down and get that little salt in the beginning. We've always put our salt inside the mold, um, just because we use the fleur de sel, which in packaging would just get brushed off because it's so fragile. But we sprinkle it in the mold, and how I always tell my staff to do it is you sprinkle it so it looks like the stars in the night sky. People are like, "What does that mean?" But that's how it's done. Like I don't know how to explain it other than stars in the night sky. And then
So,
I just think that you
yeah,
get that little salt in the beginning, and then you also, because it's inside, you get that little salt at the end. And I that little crunch, that little pop that the fleur de sel gives you, I just think is amazing.
yeah. Um, I know that you do very small batches of caramel
Mhm, mhm,
cooked over a real flame. I didn't know
mhm.
that people didn't put it over. So is it in a copper kettle or
We just use a regular big the big stock pot that you see in, every commercial kitchen. That's what
right?
we have. Um,
Okay.
I've looked at the copper pots. They are, unless you have a set like stand like you would for the like a gas flame, like if you were gonna um, uh, deep fry your turkey, like unless you have
Right.
one of those setups in your kitchen, those copper pots with the rounded bottoms can be pretty dangerous. So,
Especially
and
with
there
the
are
hot
the
caramel.
exactly. All right, do you want to show you my burns? No, I'm just kidding. I won't. I got lots of scars to share.
Okay. Are you going to put tattoos over them? And because I know that's what
Mm,
most chefs do.
Um, no tattoos on the arms yet.
Okay. Well, I look at chefs, and the more tattoos they have, I think more burns.
Yes.
Absolutely. Um, I want people to know that you are very diverse in staffing and you work with individuals living with intellectual differences.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about your program and helping these people earn a living and work. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I have to tell you, I'm so glad you asked. I'm so passionate about this. I started one day, I was at the Bethesda Farm Market, and someone walked up and said, "Do you have any tasks that you don't like to do in the kitchen?" And I was like, "Yes. I do not like to put the chocolates when they're done into the paper cups because it takes a long time and it's repetitive, and I want to be doing other things." And they said, "I have the perfect person for you." And that was a job coach from Cornerstone Montgomery, which does a lot of behavioral health in Montgomery counties. And I just had him come in, and he was great. And so it helped free me up to do other things. And now we work with Sunflower Bakery in Rockville. They train a lot of people on the autism spectrum, intellectual differences. We don't care about your gender. We don't care about any of that because that's not what makes you a good worker. Like a good worker is someone who's loyal, who cares about what they're doing. Those kinds of things um, are are what's important to me. And I I think people say differences and disabilities, but I have someone who couldn't get hired anywhere, but she can tie a bow in six
Right?
seconds. Like some of the differences are really superpowers, and that's how I think about it. And it's not charity. It's one of the smartest business decisions a lot of companies can make because, as we go into have been in a time where it was hard to find employees. Um, it's an underserved, it's an amazing population. And, I hurt my back about 6 years ago. And if it
Oh,
hadn't been for my staff, Chouquette would not be here anymore. Their work ethic, their loyalty, their wanting to help me. A lot of people come to me, they've had 7 jobs in the past 3 years, and then they stay with me for 10. And the best part is when they find the job that they love doing. And sometimes it's in a kitchen, sometimes they decide to go work somewhere else. But the fact that they had a safe and kind environment
right.
is amazing to me. That makes me feel so, so proud.
We're chatty Cathy's, and I want people to know all the information on Sarah Dwyer and Chouquette is up in the comment section. Now, Chouquette, I'm going to spell it for you folks.
Thank you.
It's CHOUQUETTE, put a dot underneath next to that, and US, and that is her website. You can go on, look all the chocolates. You have it for Valentine's Day. You have love chocolates. You have
Bad word chocolates. I have Maryland chocolates. I have chocolate puzzles. And we have an open house this weekend. So if people want to come by on Sunday before football, check out the
right,
sites check those out, because it's really fun. You get to make your own chocolate and be Willy Wonka.
right. I think 9 to 12. It's on Saturday, the 9th, is kids, and then there's an open house at 3 p.m. for adults who want to come in.
For classes, for
Um,
class. Yeah.
yeah.
I'll teach you all my secrets.
Oh,
Mhm.
oh, okay. Um, what inspires the flavors for your caramels? What do you do? What comes to you? Is it the middle of the night? You told me you wake up in the middle of the night and you want chocolate.
Mhm.
Is it rosemary? Is it five spice powder? What inspires these new flavors that you come up with?
I think it's travel. So sometimes, you travel somewhere and you try something different and you think like, oh, would that work in a chocolate? Um, and then I think there's also memories. So you have something that you just like. I make a gingerbread spice based on my mom's gingerbread spice that she would make with gingerbread houses, and it has a
Right.
little bit of cardamom in it, so it's a little bit more Scandinavian tasting. Um, those kinds of things, um, I think you can just be inspired by anything. Like, listening to a podcast, you think like, oh, like that's a big deal. Maybe I should try it and see. And I think that happens to a lot of chefs, is that you see something, you're like, I want to make that mine. How do I figure it out? And I think that's the fun part, is that, like it's like when you're a home chef, and me too, like you look in the refrigerator and you're like, what kind of stuff can I make from the nonsense in my refrigerator? And then you find something. And I think that's the fun part. And I cannot recommend highly enough the Flavor Bible. Do you have that book?
I
I
do.
love it. So it's kind of like a thesaurus. It's not really any recipes, but it will say like, oh, with milk chocolate, try these kinds of flavors. Like sometimes I'll have one flavor that I want to try, and I'll look to the Flavor Bible to maybe give me two other ideas and make sure that they work together. I will say it's one of the best books, because sometimes you make something, you're like, it's missing one thing.
Thing. There's a
It's
note
missing,
missing.
yeah, it's missing an acid, it's missing a fat, it's missing crunch. And the Flavor Bible will kind of give you a list of ingredients to help you figure out what you're missing. And I think that's the fun part. The figuring out part is the fun part for me.
Okay, everybody, the Flavor Bible. If you're into
Ooh,
cooking,
mhm.
here's an expert chef from La Cordon Bleu, the Flavor Bible. Who did the Bible? Who's the
It
author?
is Karen Page and Andrew Dornenberg.
Yeah, they've done a lot of books. I think they won awards for this.
They have won awards, but I will say it's just keep it in the kitchen. It's better than, keep a basic cookbook, but then this one, you just look it up and it says, what you have Meyer lemons, what goes with Meyer lemons, and it tells you. I love it. I love it.
Okay, everybody, that's there for you. Um, I'm looking, and let's see, we covered that. Flavors. I'm looking at my little notes. Time for my questions to end the show. And the last question, if we miss something, you'll have the ability to come in and cover that. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Go for it. Just go for it. I didn't start doing this until I was almost 40. And I was like, I wish I'd started sooner. And I think, but you also have the Julia Child method of start when you're 50. Why not? So I don't think age matters, but I really wanted to work in restaurants, and I worked in restaurants all through high school and college. I mean, sometimes I was the worst server and I would spill maybe 17 iced teas on a table. But working in the kitchen part and like learning all those things were great. So just if you remember the passion that you had when you're 3, that might be what you would love to do for the rest of your life.
Right, right. What are 2 musts that must be in your refrigerator?
I would say the Thai sweet and sour sauce. That I can't remember the name of it, but it's everywhere. I will eat that on anything. And then I also love there's a place in Frederick called Olive and Basket, and they make this garden herb vinegar. So it's like a white balsamic and then maybe garlic and oregano, maybe something else. It makes every salad taste better. It makes everything taste better. So I think sauces are where like most home cooks don't take it to the next level. So I
Right.
think having like um, something that can just perk a basic salad up and something that can perk up, a little bit of a chicken or something. I just think those two things um, make everything better. And
Well,
so does chocolate. And so does
I
chocolate.
I think people are shy on salt because
Hmm.
they know that salt's bad for them. And I taste and I go, need something else. Or I think a lot of times, even if you whatever you're doing, just that even if you're doing chicken soup, a splash of lemon juice will brighten it.
Yes, yes. A
So,
little acid makes my mom makes the best lemon chicken soup in the world. So yes,
yeah,
yeah, I do think in the flavor Bible is one of those things that you can like, you got the sweet, the spicy, the bitter, um, get it all in
salty,
there,
salt.
and that's what makes your mouth happy is because you could just put a spoonful of sugar in your mouth and it would just be sweet, but it's not satisfying until you have more textures and more
Right,
flavors, and I think
right,
that's a successful plate.
right. If you wake up tomorrow morning with a new talent, what would it be?
I sing all the time in the kitchen, and I think my staff would appreciate if I could sing on key. It's terrible. It's terrible. But I always tell people don't tell me that my singing is bad because a person who's singing is happy. And you don't want to take that little bit of joy. Like, I know it's terrible. I will not freak your fans out, Dara. But if I could sing just a little bit on key, I think it would make my staff much happier.
Well, we've gone through this before. I do aqua classes and they play oldies,
Yeah.
and I sing, and I definitely sing off key. And I've made some comments, but I do have that. I wouldn't sing anywhere else. But, I never sang in front of my husband. I just didn't sing because I
Same.
was in high
In,
school when they tested us for graduation. They told me to lip sync, and they scarred me for life.
I
So,
remember being in having to try out for chorus, even if they knew you were horrible. You still had to do it in front of the class, and like, I was never going to get picked for chorus. So,
yeah.
um, but everyone's
All
got their
right,
thing.
teachers, stop
Exactly.
testing
Be
people for
be
singing.
kinder to the people who sing off key. We don't hear it.
um, all right, Sarah, your ultimate culinary fail.
Broken Hollandaise is probably my saddest one because I feel like I have it perfected. It's like one of the you're like, oh, I can do this all the time, and then I don't know, the eggs are different, whatever. Um, and then I did have a spectacular gingerbread house collapse. Um,
Oh,
yeah, on Christmas Eve, but
oh,
we ended up just eating it. Like that's the thing with food is that it's not permanent. I mean, I try not to kill people. So that's
thank
one
goodness.
that's one thing. You don't try not to kill your customers. It's a good way to go out of business.
Right.
But I think that with most things you just like Julia Child, if you drop it on the floor and the floor was clean, it's okay. No one sees what goes on in the kitchen.
Right.
But I love the fact that you can, that again, the figuring things out. I failed last time. How do I make it work this time? And that tempering chocolate is not easy. And then when you're a small business owner, you also sometimes have to figure out how to rewire your chocolate machine. And doing that without electrocuting yourself is not easy either. So there's a lot of fails in business, but the people who get back on it and try it again, those are the ones who succeed, but they succeeded by failing a lot first. And I'm one
Right.
of those people.
Well, you're doing well, and to have those corporate accounts along with clients who, if they're in the Bethesda area, can come to your store and buy
Mhm.
online. It's very simple. Um, and you have Valentine's Day, folks, and you have time enough to order and have it shipped and look at the different verses and what's inside of them and the different flavors. Yum. All right, Miss Sarah Dwyer of Chouquette.us, chocolatier. What didn't I ask you that I probably should have?
Hmm. I don't know. I feel like we covered everything, but oh, I want to know this from you. Can I ask you a question?
You can ask.
What's your guilty grocery store chocolate pleasure? Like you just are at 7-Eleven and you're like, I need a sweet treat. What's your go-to?
Well, you mentioned one. It depends. Rolos. I do like chocolate covered caramel. I mean,
I knew we were on the same page.
we're akin. We're akin. Um, uh, a different one that I thought had disappeared off the shelf, but always Discount House always has them is Mallow cups with a
Yes.
little bit of coconut and the marshmallow. Oh, yes,
That
yes,
you're that girl.
yeah. And then I buy probably the bad chocolate covered caramel with the sea salt at Aldi's.
There's not look, there is nothing wrong with buying something inexpensive. If you like it, why would I judge you? I don't judge because if I'm an M&M's person and I will always love M&M's. But
Okay,
they're different. Like it's like there's the time when you
different
have
levels, right?
yeah, there's a time when you have, you make something out of chicken thighs and then there's other times when you make filet. Like you have to have it for all parts. And I never judge anyone because I don't want you to see the amount of M&Ms that I have sometimes eaten on a road trip. M&Ms and potato chips. That's my
I,
that's my
well,
road trip.
I don't know what it is, and I go through the same thing. If I eat something salty, I want chocolate. If I eat something chocolate, I want something salty.
Right.
And if I'm eating popcorn and then I'm looking at the canasta games, where's it past the chocolates or
Yeah.
the pretzels and chocolate. Look here, folks, there's chocolate covered pretzels with the salt. What can I say?
It's perfect. It's perfect.
One other question. Where do you
Mhm.
see your business in 5 years? Where do you want to see
World chocolate domination.
it?
Sorry. I might have been watching a couple too many Super Bowl ads. But I just want to grow steady and really, make the best chocolates I can. We spend way more money on our ingredients than we do on our packaging. And I think that's the way it should stay. We have a patent pending for our chocolate puzzle. So hopefully 2 more months and I'll hear about that. And, just continue to make everything I can the best way that I can. And that's so fun. I so appreciate being on here. I know you have such a dedicated fan base. I can't wait to see their reactions.
Well, it comes and goes. The majority watch it on Facebook, and then some watch it on YouTube, and then there's
Mhm.
a YouTube page, and it's on Jamor Living's
Yes.
website and Jamor Living's Facebook page, and I push it out, though they've been doing something different with Facebook and Instagram this past week, and I got very frustrated last week in trying to put something up that I always did, and I can't do anymore. But if anybody misses the show, shame on them because you've been a real pleasure and a joy,
Aw,
and I've had so much fun.
thank
I want to
you.
wish you the best of 2025. May Valentine's Day blow the roof off for you. And you're close by. One day we should meet. We'll
Please,
do
please,
lunch.
please. We could do a chocolate tasting. Get all the good chocolates and I'll make you do a blind tasting and see if you can tell.
All right, folks, you heard it
Thank you
here. I'm going to
guys.
hold her to it.
I'd love it. I'd love it. Have a
All
sweet
right.
day, Dara. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure, Sarah.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Okay, everyone. Now, are y'all going to run in and get some chocolates? You're going to need to go to Chouquette.us and order some chocolates. Tell Sarah I sent you. Okay. Feel free to reach out to me via my email, which is food@jmoreliving.com, or my Instagram is @DaraCooks. Or on Facebook, I do have the page called the Food Enthusiast. Next week's guest is Pinky Cole Hales, culinary disruptor in the industry, transforming America's view on plant-based fast food and striving to make plant-based eating delicious, accessible, and enjoyable for vegans and flexitarians alike. Her restaurant and bars is Bar Vegan and Slutty Vegan, gained her recognition as one of Time Magazine's 100 Next in 2023. Her cookbook, Eat Plants Biatch, I'm doing that to clean it up, nominated for the NACP Award for Outstanding Literary Work and Amazon's bestseller list. So next week, Pinky Cole Hayes will be on the show, so tune in. You can sign up at J Living for their This Week in Baltimore Eating newsletter. It is free. jmoreliving.com. Up on the menu where it says contact, fill that in. And I believe they send that out every other week. It has recipes, videos of the show, food news about what's opening up in Baltimore, what's closing, what's hot on the restaurant scene. All shows are immediately archived in video form on Jmore Living's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. Feel free to go back into our archives and enjoy past shows. May your plates always, always remain full, and I hope to see you next Thursday.